Alright, the Hills Have Eyes movies now. This was a fairly interesting film series, let me tell you. I got all kinds of emotional reactions for each one of these movies, but unfortunately, like with the past couple horror movie videos that I've done, it's been a while since I've seen them, so I can't remember everything that I would have said, which is a bummer because I did have quite a lot to mention, but life just happens, you know. You don't get around to doing certain things, which is a bummer, because I really do enjoy comparing these horror movies, yeah. So, the original Hills Have Eyes movie, it was a fairly interesting movie, like with every other horror movie I went into it cold, and got quite a lot from it, because, like, I've always been fairly fascinated by seeing how each movie tries to deal with how the protagonists are going to get out of these very tough situations where they end up like in the middle of nowhere or on an island, you know, and they got to decide what they're going to do, dealing with each other's personalities, and that's always been somewhat fascinating to me. I mean, like, this does get repetitive if you watch enough of them, but if you get it in doses, even though some of it is just like, inducing, you know, it just, yeah. And I do like how the mythos for this is fairly different from other slasher films that I've seen, even though it is a little similar to the original Texas Chainsaw movie in more ways than one. Not just the cannibalism; it's the fact that they're all a family and how they're all a little up there, you know. But unlike the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first time that I saw this movie, even though I haven't seen the original TCM, I did feel like there was a little bit of method to their madness and that they were serious enough in their actions, because that was a big problem that I had with the original Texas Chainsaw movie. I just couldn't take them seriously sometimes, but the guys here I could take seriously, and I did get menace from them for what I felt was the right reasons, even though a couple of them were very easy to defeat, and a couple of the deaths just, for both people, kind of got to me, not that great reaction, because I'll be one to admit there is a good amount of stupid deaths here for both parties, even though when you have as big group of protagonists as you do in this movie, there has to be stupid deaths. Yeah. So that was one dislike that I had about the movie, along with the fact that even though it's only 90 minutes, it did seem to be a tad bit slow-paced. I don't know. I could tell when I watched this movie that I would need to rewatch it eventually. And I'm not opposed to that, just, you know, when somebody watches as many movies as I have, you find that it takes forever to get to certain projects or rewatch things, even though they do tend to happen occasionally. So, anything else to mention? Oh yeah, I felt the twists in the plot that involved the dog and then a Ruby on the cannibal side. Those were fairly nice additions to it that I wasn't necessarily expecting. And even though there were some stupid deaths, at the same time I did feel the deaths in certain situations because I winced, although it was more of myself wincing than, oh man, I like those characters, because I didn't really feel that much for the protagonists until the end, but that was more of how the movie got intense, so maybe I was feeling for them, maybe I was just nervous myself, I don't know. And I gotta admit, the last couple of minutes, I didn't totally like the abruptness of how it ended, but like I said, I might just have to rewatch it again and find that I'm complaining about nothing. Interesting. So, I did have a definitive rating for this movie when I finished it, but based on what I've been saying in this video, I think it's best that I leave it anonymous, the rating, but I'll rewatch it again, trust me on that. So the second Hills Have Eyes movie, well, in many ways, you know, this is a clone of the first one, just with a younger group of protagonists, trying to up the comedy thingy a little bit, and really be a cash grab. Now, I mean, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially since it seems like most of the movie's crew for this movie was the same as it was with the original, at least according to the very brief list that I checked out, but I don't know, just like if I thought I couldn't really throw myself behind the protagonists of the first movie, I definitely couldn't throw myself behind this group of people. And I mean, like, I appreciate them trying to be different, go for a different age group, different abilities. I appreciate them trying to do that, but I just didn't feel like it worked here, you know? It could be a me problem, but this movie didn't do too well. Yeah, but that's not to say that, like, it completely fell flat, okay? I don't feel like my time was wasted, because I was curious to see what would happen in the movie, even though it did feel like it was a slog to get through it, let me tell you. And there were bits that really annoyed me, because some of the characters' interactions, even though it is typical of that age group, did annoy me. A couple of the over-the-top comedic moments that really annoyed me, and some moments where, like, the guys on the bikers, you know, got tripped up or were ambushed. I'm like, come on, who didn't see that coming, you know? And then how they were trying to handle the chick named Rachel, who is also the possibility set up that she's just Ruby. Well, I don't really like how they did that, because, like, so you're telling me that, you know, somebody took her away from that area and then she doesn't remember who she was or her connection to the area? Huh? And then the last scene with her where she's fighting one of those cannibals and how she gets her head hit on a rock and then they just leave her there. Now, one could assume she hit the rock with enough force to cause, like, internal bleeding in her head, but from my perspective, she didn't hit it that hard. Now, I know it's a movie, and they can't absolutely hit somebody on a rock with real force, but even with that, it just really did not feel like she was hit that hard. It seemed like she was only hit enough to simply knock her unconscious, but then she's not seen for the rest of the movie. Because I don't recall her being with the survivors, although at the end of this movie. Yeah, fairly annoying there. But I did like seeing how this movie would be different from the first, and I again enjoyed the little bits that they did with, like, the dog and a couple of the creative ways that they try and fight the cannibals. I'll give it that. But also the main villain, just not as good as the first one, because this guy was definitely a lot more awhile than the first guy, believe it or not, because that guy at least had an idea of what he wanted to do. It was just his personality that was different. This guy just, yeah. So, 2 out of 5, I think, but I've seen worse than this movie, trust me on that. And even though this isn't actually part of the series, I think I should bring up Mind Reaper real fast. Well, I did get tense in this movie, and I did feel like the actors in here were more interesting in their, what's the term for that? I'm just totally blanking out. Well, chemistry with each other, and then the character roles that they provided were definitely more interesting, but you could tell that this is not really like the other movies in behavior of its setting and the behavior of the antagonist, which I gotta admit was a little dumb in some situations. I mean, like, I think they could have done it a little better with just a tiny bit of tweaks, but just a few bits that, you know, 4 went through just didn't like it. I mean, like, I got menace from this guy, absolutely, but I still feel like it could have been handled better, to be honest. But let me tell you, those were some fairly intense last 15 or 10 minutes or so of this movie. I did get noticed for these protagonists. So, yeah. It's a nice movie, but it really should be viewed as its own bit and not taken as part of the series. But thing is, though, this film has only gotten as much attention as it has because it's been mentioned as possibly being as part of it. You gotta hate it when that happens, don't you? So I'll give it 3 out of 5 because I do believe that I have some dislikes for it, but I just can't remember what they were right now. Hills Have Eyes, the remake. I gotta be honest, I feel like this movie has a lot of similarities to the first one in terms of how I feel about it, because in many ways it is the same as the first movie, just a tad bit different personalities of the protagonists, the fact that the cannibals are now mutants, and of course some updated special effects and tiny differences in sceneries. And like I had this big comparison that involved like menace of villains and like the difference in how these actors behave that totally made me rank this movie in terms of different ways from the original, but I've totally forgotten it now. I think the issue was I was a tad bit more concerned about the protagonists in this movie, but at the same time I felt like the villains were a little less menacing and more just inducing, that kind of thing. I think that's what it was. That's not to say that it wasn't entirely a bad thing, but I did kind of miss it, because given how this is a much closer similarity in terms of original versus remake than some of the other horror movies that I've talked about, you would expect to keep a lot of the good things and have the bad stuff simply be different. But, of course, that doesn't normally happen when it comes to these movies, yeah. But I did find it interesting to see how these people would try and survive, and I was impressed by how different the deaths were, because even though they were stupid deaths and the gore level seemed to be upped up a little, I gotta be honest, it didn't feel that much over the top in my eyes. Although I was a little disappointed about how the equivalent of Ruby in here got a lot less focus. I mean, like, there was focus, mark my words, but it just wasn't as meaningful. And like the climax, I got nervous, but it just wasn't as satisfying, to be honest. Although I'll admit that was clever how Ruby just dives at that mutant and then they both fall to their deaths, because I didn't see that coming at all. I truly didn't. So I'll give it props for that. But one other dislike that I have for this is that I think the last couple of people were a lot more random in this movie than they seem to be in the original. Not sure. Like with the original, I really do need to give this one a rewatch. So I'll say 3 out of 5 to be on the safe side. I'm comfortable giving it that rating, unlike the original, which I'm so uncomfortable with any rating I had to leave it anonymous, yeah. And then as for the sequel to the remake, I gotta be honest, when I read the one-sentence plot for this movie, I was like, oh, this probably isn't going to be that interesting. And when I started watching it, I'm just like, yeah, these guys are just elegant a-holes, you know? Just, like, how the heck is this going to be an interesting movie? But as the soldiers and combat people, you know, gradually get into their situations, start encountering trouble, start bantering between each other, and then encountering the mutants, I gotta be honest, I actually started getting really engaged to it. And like, I know that I really shouldn't be liking these guys, and how, you know, it's basically the same plot, just a different group of characters that are even more obnoxious, which is a problem that I kind of alluded to that I had with the sequel to the original, but for some reason here I found myself enjoying it, even though I knew that this wasn't really that great of a movie. Just, I don't know why, just, I found it very easy for me to just keep watching the movie, despite knowing that it wasn't that great. Odd, huh? Because I didn't look at the time that much when I was viewing it. I just felt what they did in here was kind of creative, even though it was stupid in some situations, even though there were, a little less stupid deaths in here, because the way a good amount of the deaths were handled, you know, I just felt like they had a bit of a better purpose, even though I did faceplant, so let me tell you, I did. Although I can't remember which death now. And then also the camaraderie between them. Once I was able to memorize who was who, I gotta be honest, it did have some nice moments. There were a few people that I was pulling for to survive, like that woman who has either kids or a husband, I can't remember now. I didn't want her to go. And then like that other chick who mentors, I think his name is Napoleon, throughout the second half of the movie, I didn't want her to go. And then this movie did have tense situations, and even though I think that random mutant who decides to help them is a little bit stupid, at the same time, how else are they going to get out of there? And that is a bit of a tradition for these movies to have inside help in some form or another, so, yeah. So I know that it really isn't that great, but I don't know, I just somehow managed to get through it, although unlike the main Hills of Ice movies, I don't really have that much desire to rewatch it, because I could tell on the rewatch it's not going to be as good the second time around, no way, yeah. So I'll give it 3 out of 5 for its first time, but I definitely need to be very sporadic in my rewatchingness of this movie, let me tell you. Well, that went on a little longer than I planned it to. I guess I have more to say than I remembered. See ya.